Alright, so today we will be listening to Scelsi's Fourth String Quartet, which was written in 1983. Giacinto Scelsi is an Italian composer. I believe he has 6 string quartets, and so far in our listening, he is by far the oldest composer we've listened to. He was born in 1905 and he died in the late 80s. And his music was largely unrecognized until the last decade of his life. So he did get a bit of performances in the 80s. A little bit about him. He was a member of he was from an aristocratic bloodline, you could say. He was a count in Italy, and so the guy never needed to work a day in his life, really, and he received a private education. He's most famous for the music that he wrote after World War II. So in his early life, he composed a lot of pieces that you could consider modernist, and he was always doing very interesting things with rhythm. I think a pretty representative work of his earlier period is he has a piece for saxophone called Three Pieces for Saxophone, and I would compare some of the stuff he was doing to Verez, because it was very intuitively written but informed by a modernist aesthetic. Then after the Second World War, he had issues with his mental health and wasn't productive for a number of years. And then his second style, you could say, he kind of removed all Western harmony and pitch from his works, and he would write pieces of music or movements of music that were entirely based around a single pitch class. The most famous work of this period is his 4 pieces on a solo note, or 4 pieces on a single note. This was an orchestra piece written in 1959, but he continued to write in this style for decades, as evidenced by this string quartet, which he wrote in the 80s. And I can show you what I mean here. If we look at the first stanza, you can see here in the first stanza we just have a C natural and a C flat. So he's going to be, you can expect him to play with this area between C flat and C sharp for the majority of, or for a large portion of the piece. I don't remember exactly how it goes. Okay, I am mistaken. This piece was not written in the 1980s. It was written in 1964. So I'm not sure where the confusion came from, but yeah, this piece is much older than everything else we've been looking at. I'm going to listen to this recording from the Arditi Quartet. And something else you should know about Scelsi is his later work was very influential to French spectral composers in the late 70s, early 80s. So his work was still inspiring modernist composers, but people who were trying to break away from serial techniques, and composers who were trying to come up with post-serial techniques and trying to expand the sort of language of modernist music. Sweet. All right. So, couple thoughts on this one. I wasn't expecting it to be a one big long ascending thing, but it really does slowly climb like an octave, just really slowly. I think it's a cool idea for a piece, like just to keep ramping up the tension for 10 minutes. It's very exhilarating, and this thing moves at a clip. Like it is tough to follow because it's moving so fast. And I think when you explain what Scelsi does with a single note, you get the impression that his music is going to be drone-like or slow, and that's not what his music is like at all. And I think this is a great example of how like vibrant and fast and intricate his music can be. Lots of interesting techniques in here. A lot of things that we saw in Lochenmann's string quartets, but to a lesser degree, because we do have pretty focused pitch center throughout the entire piece. One moment that I really liked was there was a climax where we were kind of sitting on an F, and the cello rang out a low B flat and then a sustained like D, and we were sort of like in B flat major territory for a little while, and it was just a very strange like quasi improvised kind of moment. Another thing I really appreciate about it is how high the cello goes. That's one thing that a lot of composers don't exploit enough in string quartets, is the cello's register can go way up there. And if you like high cello, this is like really cool high cello writing the whole time. The whole ensemble sits very close together in register, and I realized partway through that there is like scordatura on this ensemble, and I think Scelsi just notates it as at sounding pitch because he has so few pitches in the piece. It's not really worth writing the fingered pitch and the sounding pitch. So one thing I noticed though was violin 2 has a low F, an open F string, and that came into play at a certain moment, and that was really cool. So maybe it's worth just looking at this briefly. So if you remember when we looked at Lochenmann, he always tuned his strings down. But Scelsi here, in the first violin, for example, both the D string and the A string are tuned up, and the D string is up a fourth, so that's very scary. That's like the string's about to snap tense. And then similarly, violin 2, the A string is up a fourth. Viola, the low C string is up a third. Like this is, you can kind of hear it in the recording. Like everything sounds very, very tense, and I think this scordatura adds a lot. Like all the strings on every instrument sound like either a little bit flat, a little bit looser than usual, or much tighter than usual. Hopefully this helps you get a sense of this piece, and if this was your introduction to Scelsi's music, I hope it inspires you to look at his other quartets, because they're all sort of his one-note pieces, but they're all totally different. Like, I remember the sixth one being very different from all the other ones in terms of the phrasing, and I think that there's definitely other quartets that are a lot less tense than this. There's ones that are multi-movement pieces, not a single movement like this one. So it is really a whole world to explore, and unfortunately we're just looking at one one of them in this series, but it's pretty easy to find recordings online, and every music school I've been at has had at least some of his scores. So they're pretty easy to find, I think. So anyways, that was String Quartet number 4. Super original work, especially for 1964. This is like around the same time that Lockenman really started forming his style. And Scelsi had already been doing this for years. So very original composer, interesting place in history, and I'm sorry if I was a little bit all over the place today. I think I got the date wrong because of this edition here. But yeah, that's the one for today.